Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an anaconda named Dima. Dima the anaconda was a curious snake and loved adventurous things. Dima enjoyed finding out where funny noises were coming from, and funny noises were all over the jungles where Dima lived. If there was a sound in the jungle that was new to Dima, he would go and search to find out what it was and where it was coming from, even if it meant it would be a little dangerous and a little scary. Dima the anaconda just had to find out. One day, as Dima was hanging out on a tree, enjoying the little bit of sun that would sneak through all the leaves and branches of the jungle, he heard a sound coming from a distance. It was a sound that was familiar but was strange. Dima said to himself, "I know that sound, but what could it be? It sounds like an animal crying out for help." He moved closer to the ground to feel the vibrations, to hear better. "It sounds like 2 animals," Dima said. "Wait, 3 animals," Dima said. "But they're all different animals." So Dima the anaconda started moving towards the sound, curious as can be, and excited as ever because it was another adventure to find out what the sound was. Dima climbed up a tree and crossed over to another tree by stretching himself and grabbing onto a branch and pulling himself up and over to another tree. And Dima the anaconda kept getting closer to the sound he heard. But then he stopped. He heard another sound. He heard this other sound before too. "Humans," Dima said to himself. Dima has seen humans before, and he had some interesting encounters with them in the past. Some humans were kind and were observing the jungles and the animals. Dima knew these kinds of humans were curious and adventurous as he was, because they would look all around the jungle to find something, and then after they checked it out, they would leave it back in the jungle and go away. But some other humans were not so nice. Dima remembers a few times he saw some humans who wanted to capture animals from the jungle. Poachers. Dima remembers seeing some of these poacher humans trapping other animals and taking them away. On this particular day, Dima stopped to see what kind of humans were in the jungle. So Dima waited, and he heard the humans talking to each other. Some of them had weapons and bags. The humans were walking somewhere, and Dima wanted to see where they were going, so he followed them. And Dima followed them to their camp. And at the camp, Dima saw 3 animals caught in cages. He saw a tapir, a wild boar, and a capybara. These were the sounds Dima the anaconda heard earlier. They were all in their own cage, in the middle of the poacher's camp. When the 3 animals saw Dima the anaconda, they said to him, "Hey, Dima, can you help us? I know usually, if it were another situation, we would be afraid of you because you would want to eat us. But we're hoping you're not hungry right now, and we're kind of desperate. You see, these humans caught us, and we don't know what they're going to do." Dima was always into adventures, but this one was the biggest adventure he had yet. Not only was it dangerous and scary, there were other animals in trouble, and they were looking to him to save them. What a day. What a situation. What an adventure, Dima said to himself. The poachers were eating a meal, and some of them couldn't finish their food because they were full and tired from a long day. So they put their food down on a table next to them and sat on some chairs. And as the poachers sat on their chairs and set their weapons down next to them too, and dozed off to sleep around the cages, Dima wandered around the camp to see how he could help the animals who were in the cages. The tapir said to Dima the anaconda, "Hey, Dima, maybe you can push on our cages and it can all fall over and break open the doors." The wild boar said, "Or maybe you can hold on to our cages and stretch up to a branch, lift us up in the air and drop the cage and it can break it open." Then the capybara said, Or maybe you can use the tip of your tail to lift the latches on our cages to let us free." Dima the anaconda said to the animals, "You're right. If I were hungry right now, I would probably want to eat all of you." But I think this is more important than me eating right now. So we'll cross that bridge if we ever get there in the future. But for now, I think if I push the cages and the doors break open, you all might get hurt. And if I drop your cages from way up in the air, you will all definitely get hurt. And if I try to get close to your cages to open the latches, the others will try to capture me too. This was an interesting situation, and Dima the Anaconda kept thinking about different ideas on how to free the animals. He kept wandering around the campsite, but his body was so long that even though Dima's head was on one side of the poacher's tent, his tail was on the other side, still catching up with the whole body as it slithered on the ground. And this gave Dima an idea. Dima the Anaconda went back to the animals above them on a tree branch while the poachers were asleep on their chairs near the cages. He told the other animals, "Hey, I have a plan. I'm going to make some rustling sounds outside of their tent on the back side of their tent, and I'll make sure to make it loud enough to get their attention so they can check and see what it is. When the poachers go to the back of the tent, I'll go and grab all their weapons with a vine and tie them up high in the trees, and that'll make sure they can't hurt us. And then, just to make sure they don't come back, I'll take some more vines and tie up their uneaten food right above their campsite so the smell can attract some of the scary animals that live here in the jungle. I think that should scare them. Then I'll come back to you all and open the latches on the cages, and all of you better run for your lives and get up out of here, okay?" The tapir, wild boar, and capybara said, "That sounds like a great idea, Dima. You're our hero." As the animals were cheering about the great idea, the poachers woke up from all the noise. One of the poachers said to the animals, "Be quiet, you jungle animals. We're trying to take a nap." And as the poachers were getting comfortable again on their chairs, Dima the Anaconda stretched his body and brought his tail to the back of the poacher's tent, while his head stayed on the ground next to the cages where the poachers could not see. Then just as the poachers were falling back to sleep, Dima the Anaconda started shaking his tail and rustling the bushes behind the tent, making a lot of noise. The poachers all got up and left their food and weapons at the table and walked toward the back of their tent to see what that sound was. Just as they walked behind the tent and got out of sight of the animals in the cages, Dima the Anaconda moved his long body and he first grabbed a vine with his mouth and pulled it toward the weapons. Dima then wrapped up and tied all the poachers' weapons together and pulled them all the way up into the trees so they can't reach them. Dima then went and took another vine and tied up all the poachers' food that they had left over on the table, and he pulled the food right above the campsite, just high enough for the poachers to not be able to reach for it, and just low enough for the smell of the food to attract all the dangerous animals that lived there. After Dima the Anaconda tied up the weapons and the food with the jungle vines, he moved toward the cages and one by one unlatched the 3 cages and out-jumped the tapir and out-jumped the wild boar and out-jumped the capybara. They all cheered, "Yay! Wow! I can't believe that your plan worked, Dima! You're truly our hero! You saved our lives!" And as the animals were cheering and making noises, the poachers all peeked from behind the tent and yelled, "Hey! How did those critters get out of here? Get them before they leave!" And the tapir, the wild boar, and the capybara ran away as fast as they could. While the poachers ran around their camp looking for their weapons, they couldn't find their weapons and they were getting very upset. Just then, a small wind picked up in their campsite, and the poachers looked up. And right above their campsite was all their food, tied up on a vine and hanging right above them. And they also saw a big anaconda hanging from a tree looking right at them. Dima then smiled and said, "If I were you all, I would be afraid of the jaguars that live around here. They can smell very well." And Dima used his tail and pointed at the food hanging over them. And he slithered up the tree and slithered away and said, "Bye. I hope you don't get hurt, and I hope you don't come back to capture any more of us jungle animals." The poachers looked at each other, wondering why an anaconda was hanging on a tree branch and staring at them pointing to their food with its tail, and just left. And then they heard some rustling in the thick trees next to their tent. And they heard some low growls. And then they heard some steps coming toward them. Then they saw something they did not want to ever see while in the jungles. It was a prowl of jaguars, slowly poking their heads out of the thick trees and leaves, each looking at one of the poachers. They smelled the food hanging over their camp, but saw something much more filling than some leftover packed meals. The poachers all screamed, "Ah! Get out of here!" The jaguars leaped out and started running at the poachers. The poachers all got in their vehicle and drove off as the jaguars got close and began pouncing on them. And the poachers left the jungle and never came back to capture the precious animals of the jungle. And as Dima the anaconda watched everything from a tree high up in the jungle, he said to himself, "This has got to be the greatest adventure I have ever had. I was scared, and it was pretty dangerous, but in the end, I was able to save the lives of 3 jungle animals and chase some poachers out of the jungle. And I'm pretty sure they'll think twice about ever coming back to capture any more animals." And Dima moved to an area of the trees where some sunlight was peeking through the thick leaves and branches. And as he closed his eyes to take a nap, he relaxed his big body and his tail started to hang gently from the tree, looking like the vines around him, until he began to naturally blend in and look just like he was part of the jungle. And the anaconda lived happily ever after. The end. The anacondas, or water boas, are a group of large snakes and typically found in South America. The green anaconda is the largest snake in the world by weight and second in place of longest snake after the reticulated python. The anaconda lives in tropical rivers and swamps in South America and in hot and humid regions. They fit in well with dense leaves and thick trees, and they like to be near water where it's easy to hide in the mud and support its big body. The anacondas rest in the sun along the banks of rivers and on tree branches that are over the water so snakes can quickly drop in the water if they need it. An anaconda's diet consists of wild pigs, deer, birds, capybaras, turtles, caimans, and even jaguars. Like all boas, anacondas don't lay eggs. Instead, they give birth to live young, and the young are attached to a yolk sac and surrounded by a clear membrane, not really a shell, as they develop in their mother's body. They are a carnivorous reptile. Anacondas live up to 10 years and can grow from 20 to 30 feet long, and they can weigh up to 500 pounds. The average anaconda can be as long as a bus. The different types of anaconda are green anaconda, yellow anaconda, Bolivian anaconda, and dark spotted anaconda. Anacondas live in tropical rivers and swamps, and even rainforests and grasslands. They love the heat and humidity, and they love dense, thick leaves and trees. Anacondas are mostly active early evening and at night. Their large size makes it a challenge to move on land, but they move very well in the water. Anacondas are solitary snakes, which means they live on their own most of the time. They can adapt very well in grasslands and even in the mud. Anacondas, like all boas, are non-venomous, but they are powerful constrictors. They typically hunt in the darkness where murky waters and mud are, so they can use their coloring as camouflage, waiting for their prey to come. When they attack their prey, they constrict them and they restrain their prey with their teeth. Anacondas swallow their prey whole after they constrict it, and their jaw ligaments are unfused, which allows them to open wide so they can swallow their prey whole. Their stretchy skin allows the body to change shape to make room for different sizes of animals they can eat. Have you ever seen a real-life anaconda before? If you have, where did you see it? Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, Bye!